Welcome. Here we go.
Yay.
Episode 4.
Yep.
4 of series 2. Can't believe we're still going, but it's the highlight of my week though, this.
Yep, I love it. And I love that. I always pick something in the week that I'm like, oh, we must talk about this, or I want to share this. And then we get to it. We have probably a note of or an idea, and then we're off on a different topic. And that's the nature of it being kind of the way it is, you know, our worlds and sharing and people influencing it with their thoughts. So
absolutely. I am going to start this though with just a quick 2 words that sometimes sport sucks.
Oh no.
So some of you may well have seen it. You may well have done, you may not. England women's hockey team yesterday, must-win game to get through the group in the Euros against Belgium, who are good, like better than us. We don't play great. 2 minutes 40 to go, we score 1-0 up. 2 minutes 40 to play.
In the bag, you think it's.
And then we concede 30 seconds later from a penalty corner.
Oh my goodness!
Back to 1-1. Out the competition.
Oh.
Like the extremes that sport can give you. And I was sat on the sofa, and my poor son, who was sat there playing on his iPad at the time, hit the roof when he, what the hell was that? As I've jumped up with the highs that sport can give you, straight back into the lows that sport can give you. And it was a fairly stark lesson to him, as much as it was to anything else, about, look, what sports giveth, it taketh away.
The way, yeah. It's I like straight away, because of where I'm at, I'm thinking, how do you speak to those athletes then after that, and their profiles anyway? So there's in a social media, there's expectations that's added to it, but oh my goodness. Well, if we're on this sport sucks hashtag, Sunday, team I work with, it's in an amateur sport, team I work with, first time they get back on the grass for an official final. It was supposed to be played 18 months ago. And they come out to play a team. They had 10 cups the year that COVID stopped. They've been working through, doing loads of bits and pieces, following to the letter of the law. They come out in the game, the referee, so there's black cards, people are going off and on. They're up 2 points. There's a minute left. You think, you know what? All you need to do is have a bit of discipline and defend and just keep them out. Like by the time, even if you get the ball and they score and they're 1 point down and he pucks it out and it goes to the other end, the minute's going to be up. They tie. It goes into overtime. They play 2 15-minute halves. People are cramping all over the place, and then they lose. They lose by 2 goals. The wheels fall off completely. So it was yay! Oh my god! Oh. Oh my goodness, it does, doesn't it? It sucks. It really does. And like, you're lost for words. Like, I think the manager said, well, listen, nobody's died today, so let's pick up our pieces and keep going. But to people who've trained for 18 months to get to that point, you know, you're kind of going, great words, but
but we know going into it that might happen, right?
Yeah. It doesn't matter though. It doesn't matter, does it? Do you, like, if you're in that place, even for like an egg and spoon race, I don't know the last time I've had one of them, so I don't know where that reference has come from. But like, if you have something that has a bit of competition and you're competitive, I don't tend to see the other side of it. I don't tend to ever think of, but what if I fail? And I guess that's part of where some people might lie in the preparation or the anxiety side of things, of worrying about failing or preparing to failing or fear of failure.
Yeah.
It has to be considered, but not everybody thinks, you know, well, winning is the only option. And I am devastated when I lose. But I said to someone the other day, even around outside sports stuff, when they say to you, how do you deal with setbacks? And I just see them as a launch pad. I don't necessarily always go, oh, this is a setback. I might just change the language and have really good people around me to kind of try and give a different perspective, usually outside the environment. So if it is sport, like Mom would say to me, well, it was the referee's fault now, let's move on, you're grand. Whereas my dad would have been like unpicking things, play by play. You did this, you did that, which didn't help. But anyway, but yeah, it's sad, isn't it, when you lose?
It is. And I guess How do we, because so from a football perspective, we're just about to enter this European Championships at senior level,
Yeah.
and the inevitable over excitement and hype that the England team get at every competition, regardless of the fact that there's way more better teams than us, people still think we're going to win it.
Yeah.
And it's very, very different at that sharp end, I think. But when you're talking about that kind of learning about setbacks, how do we help kids start to understand that that is part of the sport experience if you're going to play sport? Because my son at the moment, like, capitulates into tears and all sorts if he loses anything.
Oh, wow.
And that's not pressure to win or lose. That's just entirely intrinsic in him at the moment from self. So how should we as coaches, or how could we help young people particularly deal with setbacks?
Oh my goodness, what a brilliant question.
You know, all those notes that we've
Will we chat about this today? Yeah, nah. Well, yeah, interesting. So I've just come off a call with Judy Murray, and Judy said in that around Wimbledon, and Andy winning his first Wimbledon, but he lost in 2012. And he said, you know, everything from a media perspective, I know we're talking about, you know, an elite group of people, but she said, like, they put so much pressure around Wimbledon and winning Wimbledon. And have you, you know, has he won Wimbledon yet? You know, as his mark of greatness.
Yeah.
And she said, like, there is 126 people who've also lost. So even if you make the final and you lose the final, it is always the winner that gets that spotlight, you know, rightly or wrongly, however you look at it. But all those people beforehand have had to lose, and they may have gone out sooner or later, had extra games, you know, and get into the final, you play your 6 and you lose in the 7th. So, you know, is there something around explaining how it operates the system from a parent's point of view? Like, what are you getting yourself into, what the commitments are, what the structure is to support that kind of conversation at home or on the way there and the way back, and some key things which we've talked about before in season 1, but also having a conversation in the next session or even ongoingly about the highs and lows. So is it a scenario in training where they get used to winning and losing, or having decision making opportunities where the decision may not go their way, or they may have an outcome that isn't the goal scoring opportunity, and how we deal with the behavior of that, and what we kind of celebrate and don't celebrate in the behavior? Because there's definitely kind of a really high level of competition, or has been over the years, competitiveness in me. But how that manifests itself in a behavior when we lose, me not punching a wall, me not in floods of tears for days, me not thinking about it on a Wednesday when the game was Sunday. A lot of that is controllable in the conversations and the training that you have. I feel at the moment, there'll probably be more stuff that comes to me, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly agree with everything you talked about there. It's a really tricky one, because I did some interviews with 4 Premier League footballers, and having interviewed them, I went to interview their mum and dad, or mum in some cases, or dad in some cases, just to start to triangulate their journey, really. You know, player said, right, well, I did this, this, and this. Mum and dad said, well, actually, no, they didn't do that. They did this. You know, the challenge of trying to recall. And it was really interesting, because I think every single parent said if they lost a game, the world had ended. One current Premier League player, his mum said to me, if he lost a game of Monopoly, the board was being flipped up and going across the room.
Wow.
So I kind of get drawn into these two things, really, about, for the majority, the 99.999% of people playing sport in this country that are not at an elite level, how do we use sport to help people deal with the realities of life, in essence? But for those that are elite, it seems to be a real key elite behavior about competitiveness that you don't want to knock out of them, because that's also part of who they are and probably what makes them elite.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of then the challenge I think that we get into about the two things.
Yeah. Do you know who's coming into my head there is Michael Jordan. And there was a player who I spoke at length in West Ham last year, Kenza, about this this kind of, okay, leadership, captaincy, and kind of pulling the level and the standard up is one thing, but how you deal with kind of below expectation performance. So not a social media, not the manager saying you were this, that, and the other, not stats, just internally feeling you were below par. And how you deal with that and how long you hold that with you. So I love what you said. I completely agree. You want to maintain, like when I remember when I started last July and she was injured and she was doing some exercises, rehab stuff on the side of the pitch. And she had set up the goals with the physio and the S&C guy. And she was setting the targets within there, kind of like Michael Jordan in the storytelling, and trying to get to a point where she could say, just 5 more, just get this, just get that. So part of it was them managing her load and the expectation on the injured body and the recovery. But this bite that Michael Jordan had as well around, I want more. I'm going to make up a story about you because I want to beat you and I want to go to here, but then been able to cope with it. So is the Monopoly board flying a pattern of behavior that stemmed from, a younger age that was accepted in certain environments, and nobody kind of reeled it in, or nobody managed that expectation to say, listen, here's some positives. Or giving yourself permission to be annoyed and frustrated from a certain period of time, then looking at stats and video if you have it accessible to you. I know not everyone does, but yeah, I think there's a lot of things at play there. It's a great question to explore.
I wonder how much we have to do in this space as well about modeling behavior.
Oh, stop it. Brilliant.
And I'm thinking also directly that, so a lot of sports, and it's not just the ones you hear in the press, the football type of one, but a lot of sports have problems with parents. Okay. And one of our colleagues who was doing some work with ice skating said that they have some terrible parents at ice skating, which kind of surprised me. I thought it was just a football thing, but it's not. It goes across all sports. But I wonder if, for coaches to model behaviours to young people that are playing sport, how we deal with defeat is probably the message that they get to a degree.
Brilliant.
And if we're shouting and screaming at referees, umpires, blaming things that we can't control, finding excuses for performance, that probably comes across in the parents' behaviour as well. So, so coaches, if we've got bad parents, do we talk to the parents not about not about don't shout at the players or don't shout at the referee or don't shout if we lose, but actually, is it more about we should be framing it to the parents to say, look, our behaviour as grown-ups collectively is the message that goes to our young people that are here today. And how we think about how we behave will affect the players.
Yeah.
So whether it's that angle, but I do think sometimes, the coach's behaviour probably goes across to the players, which, if we're losing really badly, does that just manifest itself and continue to manifest itself in children's behaviour?
Mm-hmm. And that, there's definitely a couple of episodes we covered in season 1 where we talk about coaching behaviours. And again, you add a few pressured situations in there, a couple of extra eyes on you, and demands maybe in some sports for medals equal funding and stuff like that, or even just the win, the win on a Sunday morning. The people do change. And I said there to a group of rugby coaches last night, are you aware of how you behave? And how can you be? Can you get somebody to watch you? Can you do the mic up thing we've talked about before? Because there will be something that you notice that can change. And also, as you were speaking there, I'm wondering around, which I always go back to, I know it's the language thing, but how you communicate the measure of a success. So there, the wins and loss, that's there because we see it on TV and, yay, celebrate for wins because goals back of the net and all that stuff, or your faster time in the pool, faster time in the track or whatever. But if there's an improvement in how you deal with something, how well prepared you are, if there's a slight improvement in your time, but you didn't win the race, can we still celebrate those? And can we prepare the athletes going into those events that this is also what we're looking at? This is also a measure of success.
And that's why, and look, I'm entirely biased because we're sitting here having this conversation, but this is that little bit there, I think that's the stuff that the coaches should be taught about on coaching courses. You know, like I appreciate the importance of safeguarding first aid as a mandatory bit of, I get that. But this is the stuff I think that, you know, we should be really getting into the values of youth sport and how we can use this to develop young people in this particular kind of lens, rather than worrying too much about technical tactical.
Yep.
You know, how do we affect the values of what we're developing our young kids through? Yeah, it was only from, you know, making my son cry after a game of FIFA. I'm not going to let him win, right? This is also resilience building in my house.
BTW.
Yeah, but right. So let's take this as well to what we were going to talk about, which was Gareth Southgate's letter. Yes. So some of you may have seen that he wrote a letter to the country during the week, and I know you haven't read it yet, but I'm going to read you a couple of quotes from it because I'm really interested in your views. But you must read it.
Yes.
You know, you'll come away just, I mean, I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, and knowing Gareth, that just to me is him, but it's blown people's minds, and I think it's really good. So, so I've got a couple of quotes. So what's your instant response on these? I tell them, when you go out there in this shirt, you have the opportunity to produce moments that people will remember forever.
No. Yeah, stopping it. How many mics do you have there in the house? We're going to be dropping a lot of mics. Opportunity comes in there. The freedom in that word. Moments, whether it's those kind of episodic memories that they're creating themselves for themselves or for others, but the feeling that they will have. But bringing in the community, bringing in the world and the family of sport in one sentence, that's amazing. And the opportunity for me, and I don't know if it's linked just because of what we've talked about, the freedom that can go either way. It doesn't seem to be a you must or you should. It's just that you have the opportunity, and whatever happens, happens. That's the way I interpret that. It's lovely.
Yeah. What's the moment that you can go back to that grabbed you from sport, that someone has created for you unknowingly?
Oh, stop it. Okay, so here's one that's come in. We 15 years old, we're playing against a rival school in the, you know, this top of the table clash thing at home in basketball. My nan is sitting in the front row. There's 8,000 people in an indoor arena of school, our own school, the other school, some other supporters. There is an event where I'm shooting and scoring at a certain point of the match, which is, you know, the win or lose part, which is the cool part from a basketball point of view and me personally. But after that, looking over and seeing my nan standing up like this, knowing that we'd won, and I'm going,
amazing.
You know, there was nothing about the ego of the placing of the shot and where we were and that we'd actually won a cup. It was that she's there and that moment can happen and you can connect. You know, and like there was very few times she was able to travel to our local gym to see it an odd few times. But that's a moment for me that, you know, relationships I had in school with people who were either the tough kids who I didn't go near, or the friends that I didn't know I had. Everyone came back, they were like, oh, do you remember that basketball match? And that kind of rippled into the relationships I had with teachers, friends in the latter part, the A-level side of things. And obviously my nan, because there's photos and she'd be like, do you remember that time? Do you remember that time we were together in the arena? Yeah, I do, Nan. Yeah.
Let me link that to another quote from Gareth. You only need to see what I see when an under 15 comes into St George's Park for the first time, or when a senior player arrives on their first call-up. The pride for them, their families and their communities back home is huge.
like, because we know who's writing that, there's a massive assumption, which I hate having, because you shouldn't take that for granted, because it isn't the norm, but how he's bringing everybody into that bigger picture, and how he's sharing a little bit of, it doesn't matter what age, it's the respect that you'd have for any age group coming through the door as a coach or coaching team, and the awareness that there's also a pride and a nervousness and a vulnerability and an excitement that comes with that. Yeah. That's so cool. I don't know why it's come to me in my head, but there's a part in Ferguson's book. I say Ferguson because obviously I know him that well. Sir Alex Ferguson, let's reference him right, where he talks about going to speak with Ryan Giggs' mum. And I know there was a recruitment thing around that, but there's just something special around when we talk a lot about the parents and the athletes and the caretakers and all the people that are making sport happen. And you know, at his level, there's a humility or kind of a humble level that comes with that, of here's the connection, you know. Wow.
I think it's underestimated that we assume that athletes get to 18, and then coaches do very little with their parents, and assume that their parents aren't then involved. And I remember a very high profile female footballer who played for England 100 times, over 100 times, who said that her dad went around the entire world watching her play, and never once did the coach go and speak to him.
Oh my God.
Which staggers me. And I remember having a conversation with John Stones at Man City, and John said after every game he'll get in the car and he'll phone his dad. That's the first call. Like, he'll get in the car and phone his dad. But we assume, well, they're grown-ups now, you know, people take it seriously, that's the end of it. And I think it's a big miss for many. Yeah. They never stop being your kids.
No, or somebody's kid from the coach's angle, like, you know.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
And even just to kind of confirm it even more, 6 conversations I had in this mentoring program I was supporting a little while back. 6 of those senior football players in the current WSL, all of them, when we asked about inspirations in the early days and motivators and support, all of them said parents. And it could, like, I didn't dive into the relationship of the parents, or, you know, is it, you know, what kind of connection or who particularly it was. Just all of them wanted to say a big thank you to their parents. And in the older players who were not in professional football at the time were saying, they drove me 2 hours, they paid my Birmingham to London fee to go here, they paid this. And, you know, there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, sure, you know, you and I have experienced that as well, of the endless effort that somebody's gone through to get you from A to B, to watch, to feedback, to pick you up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When I played my first game of vets football about 3 years ago for this particular team, and we were playing in deepest Kent, and it was probably, it's an hour drive, or not far off an hour drive for me from here. And like 5 minutes into the game, like, and I see my dad walking towards the pitch.
Oh,
like, 76 years old, knee replacement, coming to watch me play with a load of really fat and unfit and old men. You know.
Oh, that is so lovely. That makes me emotional listening to that. That's just beautiful. Like, that's a lovely. It shows you the vehicle that conversation is in a relationship as well, and how it can really, you know, there's a pride in watching, but there's also that relationship of, you know, the family coming together over sport, over a physical activity.
Yeah.
Just really, yeah.
And the conversation never changed, because as soon as I got in the car and phoned him, he went, "Oh yeah, you looked a bit fat today." I'm like, yeah. No shit.
Damn it! He ruined that little Disney bubble I had it in.
The last one from Gareth.
Okay.
We do have a special identity, and that remains a powerful motivator.
Oh my goodness. My head's exploding.
What does that say to you?
So the special part, I love that. For me, reading that, and I can't wait to read the whole letter and see the kind of as more context to it, but the special part for me is the group, that like we know what we are and we have an identity, so you're part of something, and that sense of belonging we've spoke about before is so important, and they have a common purpose and individual goals within that, but the special identity part of that is really cool. And you know, I've worked with different teams and would say, like, what do you think the other team are saying about you, and how do you think they're preparing, and just in conversation to spark some thought. And the identity part is so important to some people, like having those words that say, this is what we represent, this is what I bring to the table, this is what I want to be accountable for.
Yeah.
What was the end of that? The special identity caught me.
And that remains a powerful motivator.
Interesting around the powerful motivator. Do you think that's an assumption, or do you think knowing where he's at with the team and what we've kind of discussed with different people and different motivations, it's a nice way of putting it. I just wonder if that special identity is the motivator for everybody. It's interesting.
Yeah, they've done a lot to explore it.
Okay, yeah.
They've done a lot about what does Englishness mean.
Wow.
And they've tried to kind of distill it down into some key things to them, like courage. Courage is one of those kind of, you know, real kind of traits. So they've done a lot of work to kind of explore that. And I think what they probably will have done as well, they will have explored individual people's reason. What is their identity as a person?
Yeah.
Why are they there? What do they want to achieve from the process, from being involved? And that kind of collective bit from a team perspective will become a big motivator. What do they want to try and achieve?
Yeah.
You know, I think was it the women's hockey team at the Rio Olympics that said that they wanted to create a legacy for women's hockey, or one of the teams that just talked about, you know, encouraging more kids to play the game. Yeah, of course they're at the sharp end and they want to change the sport, but there's also a little bit about that's a motivator.
Yeah.
There's a really good book. I've not bought it yet. It's only just come out, called Belonging, by a guy called, add it to your list, guy called Owen Eastwood. I think that's his name. Owen has spent time with the All Blacks, with South African cricket, with all sorts of kind of different high performance environments to start to understand, you know, so when Hassan Amla rocks up as a cricketer, you know, his experiences are probably very different to somebody else's. So what's his motivator compared to Joe Root or, you know, or somebody else? You know, what drives them? But yeah, I think it's an interesting one that, you know, for coaches, what's the identity that becomes the powerful motivator of the people that you're working with?
Wow.
You know,
yeah, that's amazing.
So one Premier League player grew up inner city Birmingham, never met dad, mum, younger sister. He grew up surrounded by mum, younger sister, mum's two sisters, and two nans. He literally had 7 female role models around him in his life. His first football coach was a lady.
Right.
And I said to him, well, what was it like growing up? And he went, well, it was a nightmare because you couldn't get a word in at any stage. He said, but he grew up surrounded by drugs. They got burgled, they got broken into, crime all the time. And he said, my whole motivator for playing football is to get a better life for my family.
Wow.
You know, that and this guy's a Premier League player. You know, that's his entire motivator, was to build a better life for his family.
Yeah.
But unless we understand people's identity, their stories, their journeys, leading with that curiosity to find out about them, you'll never get to the heart of that kind of coaching relationship stuff.
No. That's so passionate. But that's absolutely brilliant to look at, kind of maybe wrapping up some of the stuff from today, looking at the basic kind of connection of the relationships. Not that it's basic, it's quite complex. The tech tack is the easy part of it. The relationship's more complex. Making an effort to understand where people are coming from, and understanding that they're valued in your eyes, not just for the ability they have to execute a skill and to be whatever in the session, but beyond that. And then, and I know you've spoken about this around your new role from a football perspective, and putting together the handbook, or putting together the values and sharing it across different coaches and getting their input, how important it is and how impactful it can be to know the journeys and then put something together. So that special identity is actually a really key motivator, because everybody's in it. Everybody's in that and considered within the identity and has contributed. How did the letter make you feel? If we can finish on that, or what did it make you? Because I know you're brilliant for ideas of, I wonder, could we do that here? And this is how it felt here. What?
Well, I mean, when I tweeted about it, the big thing it made me look forward to was people's responses in 3 years' time, 4 years' time, whenever Gareth leaves the role, which he will do at some stage. And we'll get someone else into that job, which, I mean, other than Boris and the Queen, it's probably the most talked about job in this country. And I think that letter, what he talks about, I mean, it just, I've got a huge bias, and it chimes entirely to my values and beliefs. But we'll have some other manager come in that will not get it in the way that Gareth does, and it will go back to some kind of proper football, just football thing, without seeing the bigger picture of sport in this world. And I don't know if survive's the right word, but I experienced a lot of England managers, from Fabio Capello, who were very extreme, to Sven, and Sven is much more like Gareth, but Sven was just thought about people. I thought he was, a bit odd at times, but really nice bloke. But we'll end up with another manager that might win a few matches, and Gareth is ultimately judged on whether he wins football matches, not whether he can write a nice letter. But we just have to try and maintain somebody that gets it like that gets right to the core of, look, sport is incredible. It gives us these highs and lows, and look where we started with the whole fact that sport sucks. Good. But never forget that.
Yeah. What a brilliant thing to finish on. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We're at Coach Convo on Twitter, coachconversation@gmail.com. You can see them below. There's so much there. Even your thoughts on the letter, we'd love to hear. We'll be retweeting that and putting it across different social media channels. But join us next week. There's more to come, more meandering, more coach conversations, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts on the season. So have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.